Yep, that's me, doing one-shot pistol drills while standing out in the rain. Technically it's a visual representation of my stubbornness being played out in full effect. But that's beside the point. Once we look past it and the fact that one-shot pistol drills are largely a waste of time and ammo, there's actually a few points that we can walk away from. So I figured we'd do that and take a look at my gear afterwards and see what all failed, didn't fail, what needed improvement on, kind of just a rundown. We also have a big announcement to go over regarding the channel, so we'll go over that before we dive into all this. But real quick, let's go ahead and roll that intro.
I am the nation. I was born on July 4th, 1776, and the Declaration of Independence is my birth certificate. The bloodlines of the world run in my veins because I offered freedom to the oppressed. I'm many things and many people. I'm 200 million living souls and the ghost of millions who have lived and died for me. I'm Nathan Hale and Paul Revere. I stood at Lexington and fired the shot heard round the world. I'm Washington, Jefferson, Patrick Henry. I'm John Paul Jones, the Green Mountain Boys, and Davy Crockett. I'm Lee, Grant, and Abe Lincoln. I'm more than 3 million farms. I'm forest, field, mountain, and desert. I'm quiet villages, and I'm cities that never sleep. You can look at me and see Ben Franklin walking down the streets of Philadelphia with his bread loaf under his arm. You can see Betsy Ross with her needle. You can see the lights of Christmas and hear the strains of Auld Lang Syne as the calendar turns again.
I appreciate everyone sticking around. I know that intro is a little bit long-winded, but what can I say? Johnny Cash just has a way with words, and it doesn't feel right cutting anything more out of it than what I already have, so it's gonna stay. But if it's not your cup of tea, feel free to go ahead and fast forward through it. It's not gonna hurt my feelings. Alright, announcement time. We have a website. Now, I say we have a website because, well, it was built for us, consumers of the GunTube world. And I want this to be the online hub for voices not backed by tens of thousands of dollars in online marketing. I know I'm not the only one tired of opening up YouTube only to see 12 videos being dropped all on the same day, all on the same product, and all of them telling me it's the best thing since the last time they did this shit. Then, for the next 2 weeks, my feed is filled with nothing but Springfield Kuna reviews. YouTube used to be a place filled with nothing but people doing this and other shit simply for the love of the game. They had a passion, a hobby, a fucking quirk that they wanted to share with the world because they thought it was important or thought it was cool. Folks with no aspirations of becoming rich off the backs of blue collars, and individuals who can't be bought out by the first big name flashing a few bucks and a free gun their way. Those guys and gals are still out there, lost in the noise of big advertisement and sellouts. Folks like the G-Wad Alchemist, Uncle OJ, and the boys over at Light Fighters Anonymous. Even bigger channels like Brass Facts, S2 Underground, Focus Trip, and Invention Incarnate, all of which have no idea who I am, so don't go yelling at them about anything I say here, still have retained what I would call honest thoughts and would continue to do what they do, even if you were to take YouTube out of the equation. So I made a website for people like them, like myself, and for you, watching, likely on the toilet. I want the website to be a hub for the community that has all sort of topic-related resources available. The website will be linked in the description below this video and all future videos moving forward, but it's called Rebel Spirit Combative Training Applications.com. Yes, I know the name is longer than that one fish you caught but forgot to take a picture of, but RSCTA was already taken, and I really wanted that .com at the end, so it is what it is. When you go to it though, and mind you it's only a week old and my first attempt at a website, the main page has some useful online tools that if you're watching this video, you're either already aware of or should be aware of. They can help you create detailed maps of your area or help you source the best price of fuel for your guns. You'll find stuff like firearm drills, printable targets, and government agency qualification standards in our training resource tab with stuff like communications, navigation, water treatment, and much more soon to come. Discount codes and links from companies who have partnered with myself or other content creators from our community who wish to list them can be found all in one spot. As of now, there's only one listed, but with any luck, more will soon to follow. So if you're watching this and you have a product or service that fills a need and isn't just rebranded Chinese dog shit, feel free to reach out. And speaking of community, here we have my personal favorite part. The heart of the website, the BCG of the rifle, if you will. A hub of content creators and small businesses that not only do what they do because they love it, but they also offer value and wisdom, each in their own way. Under each profile are links to most, if not all, of their different platforms, making it very effective for followers of one creator to find other content they will likely enjoy, instead of refreshing the YouTube For You page a dozen times before something of remote interest pops up. As of now, there's only a handful of people featured on this page, but as time goes on and awareness of this site grows, I hope to have so many content creators a drop-down categorized list will become necessary. Anyone putting out good content who's not a paid shill pushing off junk as just as good is welcome here. You can make your bread, just don't be dishonest about it, and try to do it in a way that is a net positive for the entire community. Which brings me to the Amazon deals page, and how I'm going to attempt to fund this website and all of its future projects, which are numerous. Here we have a growing page that will be dedicated to gear, equipment, and supplies found on Amazon, categorized out for easier navigation. Everything here I either used, tested, or had suggested to me by a reliable source, and I believe to be a good buy, largely worth the price. Yes, I'm looking at you, Surefire Turbo, who's flirting with that fine line of is the juice really worth the squeeze? Everything listed is an affiliate link and helps the channel when you or anyone else purchases something through them. I've never felt quite right about asking folks to donate to the channel simply for making content. Not talking shit on anyone who does, it's just not my rodeo. So instead, I've cultivated a list of consumables and one-time buys that will hopefully support future projects financially. Poke through there when you have some free time, and if you see something that you need or are starting to roll low on, consider using the link provided. And that about covers all the major talking points when it comes to the website. Again, this project is only a week old, and my expertise when it comes to website design is non-existent. So if you have an idea, topic, or resource that you wish to see covered, or find a bug, glitch, or just oversight, reach out and I'll do my best to square it away. I appreciate everyone who stuck through the announcement. Now let's get back to the topic at hand. So why am I standing out in the rain performing drill that doesn't do a ton for me? Well, as far as the ladder is concerned, this was my first week I started to work on speed, and I was trying to figure out the best way to go about that process. Initially, I was filming to get a baseline for future comparisons, but once the rain came and ruined all my targets, my game plan for that day just kind of went out the window. Since I could no longer pace targets and my ability to gauge hits were extremely limited, so I decided to just get what data I could and hopefully gain some insight in the process. Why not just head back home and pick up some fresh targets while I waited for the rain to stop? Well, the range is about a 90-minute drive one way for me, and my truck is anything but conservative when it comes to gas. I only get to hit the range every 2 to 3 weeks because of this fact, and I also woke up at 3 a.m. in order to be up here and get my targets set in place, that way I could start as soon as opening time hits, hoping to have the range all to myself for a few hours. All that said, my ass was here to stay, and I was determined to get whatever could be salvaged from this range trip, limited as it may be. Cue my ass getting rained on for the next 2.5 hours. At some point during my stubbornness, I figured it was a good chance to evaluate my equipment and see what problems popped up when completely soaked. Like mentioned prior, the majority of my time was spent doing one-taps, but towards the end I did start doing other drills. Not necessarily to work on my performance, but to see what issues arose from a user's perspective. Luckily, I'm happy to report that there was no catastrophic failures during that limited time, meaning nothing arose that stopped me from continuing the range session, and nothing completely crapped out on me. We do have a few points to go over equipment wise, but we will do that when we look closer at the kit here in a second. The user experience wasn't horrible, but again, I only got rained on for 2 to 3 hours, so I didn't get the full picture suck that I otherwise would have if I had continued throughout the day doing topic related tasks, i.e. fighting, rucking, patrolling, or even just sentry work, meaning the majority of the negative impact getting soaked does to oneself doesn't really start kicking in until about 3 or 4 hours afterwards. There's a big difference between getting wet and staying wet. And staying wet while performing physical activities, especially when wearing layers of clothing and kit, will lead to stuff like chafing, overexertion, blisters, low morale, and overall a degraded performance. Even more so in hot and humid environments. I don't need to re-experience chafing and blisters to know that that shit sucks more dick than some of the online haters this community has. I skip that bullshit, stripping down and changing into a fresh pair of chonies and socks I keep stashed in the truck. But it's something to be aware and mindful of. And this is a topic for a different video, but if you don't have a duffel bag with a change of clean clothes stashed in your vehicle at all times, I don't know what to tell you, besides that you're likely adopted and your parents don't really love you. Back to the user experience. Other than dealing with the aftermath, both to myself and increased maintenance on my equipment, the only other thing to note was everything was just slower and harder. As soon as my clothes and gear got saturated, the load I was carrying got heavier. Now, I'm horrible about weight estimations, but I'd say it's somewhere between 10 and 20 pounds. And if you're carrying a backpack full of shit, you can probably add another 10 pounds on top of that. Which is a noticeable difference, right? I mean, it's like carrying a tire around with you everywhere you go. So if you live in an area that frequents sporadic showers, it may be worthwhile to invest in clothing and equipment that does better at not retaining water. I'm not extremely well versed when it comes to that specific criteria, but I do know companies that the military contracts their clothing and equipment from have specific materials and designs that is meant to both repel and shed water. Off the top of my head, First Spear comes to mind, but I'm sure there are many others. That or just integrate a poncho into your kit, which is likely something I'll be playing with on this specific setup. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and take a peek at it and see how everything held up, as well as a few thoughts.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Future me here. Upon editing all this footage, apparently the word fine came to mind a good bit. Now, I'm not going to go back and redo it all, so instead, if you got a beer, go ahead and take a drink every time you hear me say it. Then afterwards, let me know what you're drinking down in the comments. Cheers.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
But just as a brief overview, here we have a belt system set up. This one's going to be your more duty style belt with the hook liner. Couple of pistols, rifle, radio communications, plate, and carrier. I took the plate out of the carrier just so we can get a good look at both. Afterwards, we'll do a pouch dump and see how all the contents held up. I left the clothing off the table just because, clothing is what it is. I do have one piece of clothing we'll go over. Clothing is important, but yeah, there's just not a ton to look at. So give me 1 second. I'll go ahead and get this camera repositioned and we'll get to work. All right, in efforts to clear some room off this table, let's go ahead and knock this belt out first. We already touched up on materials earlier, so we'll skip over that and go straight into drain holes. Typically, most pouches will be affixed with some form of drain hole. 9 times out of 10, you're going to see this little metal grommet down here at the center, which allows water to drain through it, obviously. But more modern companies nowadays are actually starting to skip the grommet thing and leave a little gap on every corner of the pouch, allowing water to drain out that way. All my pouches have drain holes in some form of fashion, so I was good on that form. And you also want to make sure that your holster, if it has a closed bottom, typically water will still drain out through the sides of these little cracks right here, but it doesn't hurt to go ahead and knock that plug out if you're using a Safariland, that is. Next, we need to go over contents of the pouches. So everything in all my pouches got wet. Dump pouch, nothing was really in there, or if there was, it was just empty mags, so that didn't really hurt anything. Up front, you have your mags, and it's not going to hurt those to get wet. Just note that they will become a little bit slippery. Peat mags, not so much, just because these little indents actually do help a good bit, but stuff like your Glock mags or your metal peat mags might become a little bit more slippery. Contents of this pouch is typically, at least when I'm on the range, is going to be training supplies. So in here, I have a little, drill card. If I forget what I want to do or just kind of have a mental break, I can just pull this out. I have some drills just kind of already preset on there for me. That's laminated, so that one's, obviously okay. In here, I typically keep some little cardboard pasters. And I think, this is actually the same set that was in it whenever I got rained on. Now, my cardboard targets got soaked anyway, so I couldn't really use these anyhow. But yeah, if you want to make sure that your range supplies go a long way, perhaps put stuff like this in a plastic bag. And this main compartment is empty as of now, but typically I keep stuff like my cigarettes in there, and obviously those got completely ruined, which sucked. Next, we have an IFAC, and I think this one is from Bear Solutions or something like that. It's like the Bear Fac 3.0. Great pouch. Contents, I did check everything. The contents did get wet a little bit. However, everything in here is actually in its own like insert, and inside the insert, everything's in its own plastic bag as well. So the medical supplies itself actually stayed fairly good, But anytime stuff like that gets wet, you always want to make sure that you double check it. Attached to the pouch is another TQ pouch. This one is, I don't know, 50-50. So it's exposed. The TQ did get wet, but luckily it's fine. I went ahead and checked it, make sure everything was good. Velcro's still good. No major fraying on any of the sides or anything like that. So dried it out, make sure everything was good to go on that one. However, if you're worried about keeping your stuff a little bit more protected, maybe go to a completely enclosed TQ pouch. That might help as well. And the holster is fine. If the holster gets wet, that's no big deal. If anything, it just kind of helped clean out any dust or dirt that was in there. And lastly, we'll go over the belt. So the belt itself, I believe, is from Tacticon Armament, and it's just something I'm kind of testing out in comparison to my work belt that I use, which is Blue Alpha. Good belt right there, but yeah, I was trying to see if saving some money would be okay, and so far I've had this for a year and it's still holding up fairly well. Velcro is still very hooky, so it sticks to everything no problem. The buckles, they're definitely less robust than ones from like the Blue Alpha or whatever, but I haven't had a problem with it coming undone or anything like that. So belt has held up just fine, and there was no major problems with it getting rained on. So we can go ahead and move on from there. Next, let's take a peek at the plate. So the plate itself is from LA Police Gear, and it's their level 4 ceramic plate or whatever. They say NIJ tested, but I doubt it really went through the actual testing process. I've had these for about 5 years, and other than being heavy, they are holding up just fine. You can see the little casing material starting to get a little fraying right here around the edges and stuff. But I've beaten these things up really good over the years, and they've actually held up pretty well. One thing to note though, when I was drying them, so I actually took them outside to dry and laid them on our air conditioning fan, and there was a couple of little indentation points on the fan itself, like a little couple of bolts or something like that, and I wasn't paying attention. And when I laid it on there to dry, I got a little permanent indentation from those nuts and bolts. So just something to be mindful of when you're actually trying to take care of all your equipment. But yeah, plate did fine, and no major concerns there. Since the pistols are laying right here, let's go ahead and take a peek at those. First things first, let's go ahead and clear that real quick. Good there. Good there. All right. So the pistols, they did just fine, largely. This one did not have this tape on it at the time of filming, and I went ahead and added it afterwards. Not necessarily due to that factor alone, but the Glock just lacks texture in my personal opinion, so I just needed something anyway, so I went ahead and added that. At the time, the Glock also had a Holosun 507C on there, and as you can imagine, open emission red dots and rain do not mix very well. The dot itself, it held up. It didn't go down or anything like that, but the clarity of your dot was completely gone, and you pretty much didn't really have one. It starbursted out on you like crazy. You couldn't really see the center point of it. You could tell that there was a dot somewhere in there just because you had like a little dot here, 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 here. But yeah, you really couldn't see a fine center point. Anytime that you shot, it would knock off a lot of that water, but you would still have some beeps on the emitter itself, kind of, again, starring out that dot. So that was a no-go. I had this EPS on a different gun, so I went ahead and ordered a plate and took that EPS off that and added it to the Glock just to make sure it was gold. That's a little bit dirty. Hang on. There we go. Beauty of those enclosed emitters. You can just wipe it off real quick. But yeah, added that back on there, added some tape, and the Glock is good to go. One other thing to note, though, while I was shooting, and I'll try to roll in some footage, the Glock trigger, whenever it got wet, felt very squishy. I think that was the word that I used in my video, is it felt squishy. It was a little bit more gritty than anything else. It didn't have that smooth trigger pull. I did have the Glock Performance trigger installed right before then, so I mean, it was a fresh trigger with fresh lube on it and everything like that, so it had every reason in the world not to kind of like seize up on me, and it didn't, and it never seized up to the point where it stopped firing. Like, it never got to that point, but you could just feel the grittiness in it really bad. As soon as I kind of like dried everything out, it was just fine. CZ P10, I also had this out on the range. I didn't notice any kind of grittiness or smushiness with the trigger whenever it got wet compared to like the Glock. And at the time I did have the EPS on it as well, so I didn't have any kind of problems with the starburst. Didn't have the tape on it at that time, but I had also done this kind of like shit stippling job myself. And even though it looks kind of awful, it works really well in itself, so I didn't have a problem with the gun moving out of my hands or anything like that. So CZ was actually, in my opinion, during that specific incident, it actually performed better than a Glock, partially due to the optical toys, and then partially due to the trigger whenever it got wet. Just did not feel gritty to me. But anyway, those were about it when it comes to pistols, so we can go ahead and look at the radios next. Oh, there was one thing I wanted to note about the Glock. So I haven't really cleaned it since that whole, debacle went down. I dried, kind of dried out the internals really well, but I never gave it a cleaning or anything. And lately I've been having problems with the actual reliability of it. Now, I don't know if it's ammo related or if it's because maybe, all that gunk just kind of like gooed up from being wet and never really got a good cleaning out. So I'm going to have to take this apart piece by piece, give everything a solid wipe down, and see if that fixes the problem. I'm sure it's either that or ammo related because, Glock perfection and all. But yeah, something I'll just kind of keep y'all updated on. So I wasn't actually talking to anyone while I was out there, so my radio wasn't on while I was actually getting rained on, but it was out there taking the beating with me. Radio did fine, PTT did fine, and the headset, the Peltors, they did fine as well. Obviously, these things are designed to be able to get wet and still function. However, it is nice to know that they in fact do what they're supposed to do, especially mine, given the fact that it's definitely got some wear and tear. But yeah, radio did fine, dried it off, and fired right back up, no problem whatsoever. Connections looked fine, no erosion, no rust, nothing like that happening. So everything's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Still wouldn't want to trust this to get, stay wet. It's kind of an expensive piece of equipment. There we go. So definitely going to take measures in the future to protect it a little bit more. And we'll get to that here in a second. Only other thing to note was that my ear cups did fill up with water. These things don't give you like a 100% suction proof cup around your ear. But yeah, so these things did fill up with water. So every once in a while I did kind of have to do that just to get all the water out. The noise never sounded like the water was damaging the audio quality or the speakers or anything like that. That about covers it for the radio, but we'll come back to it here in a second. Next, we have the plate carrier. Plate carrier is from Defense Mechanisms, and I've had this sucker for 4 or 5 years, so about the same amount of time as I have my plates. The cummerbund is from Agilite, and again, it's doing fine. The only thing to note is that, because this thing has some extra cushioning right here in the back built into it, which is really nice when you're actually using the damn thing, it did feel like it got really, really heavy, obviously. This is the radio pouch. This is where the radio was the entire time. As you can see, it wasn't completely exposed. It has this little plastic lining right here. But the top part was completely exposed, and this part right here has no plastic lining or anything like that. Pouch contents were, good. So in here, I just have a little 20 round magazine in case I need to go prone for any reason, or my 30 rounders getting in the way. Middle compartment, I keep my batteries, and batteries themselves are all in these little plastic 3D printed containers that I got off of Amazon, which I also have listed on my website. Don't forget to go check that sucker out. Shameless plug. But the batteries themselves, they did just fine. Never got wet at all. No signs of corrosion whatsoever. So I'm really happy these guys worked and they did what they were supposed to do because, yeah. Making sure my batteries stayed nice and fresh is always a concern. And sticking them all in just a plastic bag is just asking for all kinds of problems. So I'm glad to know that those held up just fine. And then in this pocket, I just keep a multi-tool. What else is down here? A battery that probably isn't fine because it's just been left in there like that. Oh well, we'll stick it back in there. You never know. And just a little pin light, which seems to be working just fine as well. So no major problems there. Up here in the top is just going to be a little rat in the rain, and as you can imagine, that thing is fine as well. Contents of this pouch, let's see how it held up. Got some little lens wipes, again, individually wrapped, so those guys are doing okay. Little tool, it's doing just fine. What else is in here? Oh, just another random battery that's probably no good, so they can go in the trash. So, main compartment, lighter. So this lighter was in there just like this, and at the time obviously it didn't work, but now it does just fine. That'd be, if I needed fire in that exact moment, that'd be a problem. I don't think that'd ever be the case, but you never know. 50 cord is okay if it gets wet. Some zip ties, again, okay if it gets wet. Headlamp, it got wet, but tends to be doing just fine. Typically what I'll do is just get some one wrap, place it right there on my shoulder, wrap it around, and then I can just kind of arcuate my light if I need some like working light. It works, not the best, but it works. Chem lights, individually wrapped, so those are good as well. And then face mask. So face mask, again, got completely soaked, so don't think that'd really be a problem or anything like that. But if you wanted to make sure, like let's say instead of having a face mask for some reason you had like fucking socks or some shit like that in there, you may want to make sure that those were in a plastic bag as well. And that about does it for the carrier. Like ammo doesn't hurt if it gets wet, knife doesn't hurt if it gets wet, but it did get a little bit rust on it, so I'm gonna have to go in there and give a little TLC, but blade is doing just fine. That about does it for the carrier. Alright, before we dive into the rifle, I want to go over a few things that we could have done to our kit but prior to made our life a little bit easier. So here I have, we have these little battery containers again. Now again, we didn't have any problems with them, but redundancy is always a good thing. So being able to have all of these inside their own containers and then have all the containers inside of a plastic bag as well, that might be the ideal way to go. And this is actually my battery pack that I keep in one of my other kits, and this is how I always have that set up. So I may want to go ahead and do that to my plate carrier system to make sure that those batteries stay dry. Here we have a lighter that has been just, put in a plastic bag. You're going to notice a lot of this is going to be the same thing, a lot of plastic. But yeah, so just make sure that you have your lighter inside of a plastic bag. That way, in case you ever do need one, you have it. Document protection. I'm not going to open this up because, I got maps and shit like that in here. But you want to make sure that you got your maps and any kind of sensitive documents and stuff like that protected. You can find these cheap ones on Amazon. They're a little bit bulky, but they do the job just fine. Pair of gloves. So I was a bad Minuteman and didn't have my gloves on me at the time of recordings. Didn't really end up being a problem, but it could have been. And this could have made sure that any kind of slippage problem I was having with maybe a sidearm or main weapon or just really anything at that point, a little bit of extra texture would have made a world of difference. Even if that lack of dexterity would have hindered me some, the added grip probably could have been helpful. All right, radio. Told you it'd be back. Alright, so we didn't have any problems with our radio. It is waterproof and everything like that. However, it is a sensitive piece of equipment, and we may want to take extra steps just to ensure that it's, taken care of. So I can't remember who was the first guy to do this I saw on YouTube or whatever, but basically we're just going to be wrapping this sucker up in a plastic bag. So what I have done is I have taken a long plastic bag, whoopsie, and went ahead and just burned 3 holes in it, like so, yeah. And basically all we're going to be doing is pushing everything through the holes, taking our attachments, going back in afterwards, and just reattaching. Like so. Now we had in the bottom made some drain holes, right? So I'm not going to close off the bottom, but I am going to fold it over like so. And I got a couple of drain holes. There's another one right there. It's hard to see. But now that I kind of got everything set up the way I want, just take a couple of Ranger bands and do my best to try to make it nice and pretty. Give me 1 second. Nothing too crazy fancy, enough to where it's mostly protected, but I still have actual use to it. Turn it on, stuff like that. Bam. Anyway, so I went ahead and did that, and I'm going to try to run it like this for a little while and see how that goes. But yeah, something you can do to give your radios a little bit of added protection. And lastly is a poncho, right? All of this could have been avoided if I would have just had a damn poncho on me. Take a couple of minutes, undo this, throw it on, be okay, right? Wait out the rain a little bit. My targets still would have been fucked, but hey, at least that would have been better. Rifle, all in all, did good. No major problems. I did have like 1 failure to feed, I believe it was, but I just kind of chalked it up to being a newer build. This entire build is just a collection of parts that I had laying around that I ended up throwing together just to make a whole nother rifle. Had to order another BCG. I think I went and picked up a grip. Definitely picked up the optic as well. Other than that, everything I had prior, and so I just went ahead and tossed it all in. The optic is a 4X prism, and didn't have any problems like water on this side or on this side. I could still see everything just fine. So it flickered like 3 or 4 times while I was using it. However, the battery that's in it is the one that it shipped with, so I don't know if they gave me a good battery or not. I don't know. It's working now, and it's not flickering now, so I don't know. I'm guessing that flickering had something to do with the water. Anyways, I went ahead and did a rifle breakdown while I was at the range that day in the rain. I figured it'd be kind of like a cool way to end the video, so I'll go ahead and roll that footage in. And yeah, if you like the video, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe. Don't forget to go check out that website. Link will be in the description. And until next time, later. A little better, yeah? Alright guys, since we're already out here in the rain, so here we have a mesh posh of all kinds of spare parts that I had laying around from an old build. We got a Surefire Warcop enclosed flash hider, BCM enhanced lightweight barrel, 14.5 inches, low profile gas block from BCM. This foregrip is again from BCM, just something else I had laying around. Bolt carrier group, Sons of Liberty Gun Works. The upper receiver, I believe, is from PSA. The lower receiver, again, PSA. Nothing fancy, it's just a shell. We got a BCM mil-spec trigger. Standard H2 buffer weight with a standard spring. Magpul furniture, just because I had it laying around. I think this might have been new, and I just needed a grip. Charging handle, mil-spec, nothing fancy. I did buffer the fucking piss out of this thing though, so let's see if I can. Yeah, I mean it's kind of fucking dirty or whatever, but did some work to it just to make it, more user friendly. Optic has been a who's this fucking optic by? Vector Optics. It's their 4X prism. Not bad actually. It's actually a pretty decent piece of glass. The only bad thing is the fucking, I would say, the mounting system. So it's got a T1, T2 mounting interface footprint, which is typically great because, you know, you can find mounts like that for the Wazoo. The only bad thing is you can't find hardly any mounts for the T1, T2 that actually push the optic backwards. Ideally, I would like to have this optic maybe sitting about right here, right at my charging handle, just because I actually have to, you know, collapse this down one notch, and I have long monkey arms, so I'd actually prefer to extend that out, but collapse it down one, and it gives me a pretty decent eye relief for the optic. For the sling, it's just something I had laying around again, Blue Force gear. Nothing too fancy, and yeah, so far she's doing great. I've had a couple of jams. Don't know what that's about. I think it has something to do with my gas block, maybe because it's, you know, again, hard to tell because of the rain, but this hand right here, right at my pinky, was all fucking caked with black shit while shooting. So there's got to be some kind of leak or something going on right there. Can't really tell. Anyways, guys, I am gonna go ahead and get naked and drive home because I'm fucking soaking wet. This is Rebel Spirit Operations. There's my fucking bag. It is soaking wet. I'm gonna have to fucking dry every fucking thing. This is gonna suck. Give me a like, guys. Training in the suck. Love you, fellas. Peace. Training in the suck. Training in the suck. Really does suck. I hope to God none of this shit gets fucking ruined. It shouldn't. Spent way too much fucking money on all this shit for fucking water to ruin it.